Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm joined today with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, County Legislator Minority Leader Margaret Kensico, who represents the district that we're here, and a number of other people who will be introduced by our two municipal leaders, the town supervisor of the town of Mount Pleasant, the Honorable Councilwoman Gen Z, and Councilwoman for the town of North Castle, who is here representing the town board, and the supervisor, Michael Shalero, and she's represented by Barbara Giacinto. We're here to discuss a letter that I have sent to the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, the Honorable Vincent Sapienza, in which we ask, all of us ask, for the department to allow us to present a plan that would enable us to reopen Kensico Dam Road, which has been closed since the period of time after the 9/11 terrorist attack. I am 2 years in this particular position, and whatever discussions have occurred to prior county executives, I want the DEP to give us the opportunity to reevaluate the situation on this road and to make a determination if it can be opened, a partial reopening. I'm sure that both Councilwoman Gen Z and Barbara Giacinto, and of course Margaret Kensico, are going to talk about what the impact of this closure has been on the town of Mount Pleasant and on the town of North Castle, what it does to the traffic flow, and what a hardship it's been for the residents of both of those two communities. We recognize that this road goes across the dam that holds back thousands of gallons of water, and we understand that it is a very important dam to secure for the health and safety of hundreds of thousands of Westchester residents. But I also know that all across America, there are roads of strategic importance, bridges that connect from one side of a place to another side of the place that might also be targets for terrorists. And in some fashion, those bridges are secured in a way to allow their use. You can think of any major bridge in this nation, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Verrazano Bridge. All of those bridges are potential targets for terrorism, but in some way, shape, or form, there's been a willingness to try to determine how best to protect life and safety, and to do so in a way that will also allow necessary traffic flow. Nobody would in their right mind suggest that we close the Verrazano Bridge and cut off the island of Staten Island from a direct connection into New York City. Every day, thousands of commuters are on that bridge at one time, and so life and safety and health is at stake. So we believe that working through our professionals in Westchester County, reaching out to local officials, emergency services people, we can put together a plan that we hope will be workable. Some of the elements may be, because we haven't put the plan together, some of the elements of the plan may be certainly the continued closure of the road during nighttime hours. We do not expect it to be open at night when it would be very hard to police it properly. There would clearly be a prohibition of trucks, vans, buses, and any oversized vehicles. We would look at what would be the most practical way to limit those hours of operations. And we would consult with our traffic professionals as well as our police professionals in both towns and in the county, and talk to the elected officials in both communities to determine what are the most critical times that this would have to be open. And we'd have to have a discussion about how emergency services could use this road in a matter of emergencies. Because if we're talking about life or death, it may be that the police, the fire, and the EMS services, if they have access to this road under controlled emergency circumstances, could save a life in North White Plains or could save a life on this side in the Valhalla area. And what we're going to task our law enforcement groups to do is not just to open the road, but to come up with a detailed plan and cost it out so that what we come back to DEP with is a detailed, workable plan. This letter merely requests the DEP to allow us to put together a plan so that we can then present it to them and then have the natural give and take that goes into any sort of a proposal. We think collectively that the need for traffic relief is important, and I think we collectively believe that if we put our heads together, we can put together a plan that could pass muster if we're willing to have the higher authorities consider it. We have not discussed anything with our federal friends yet. This is a matter where we need the approval to go forward. If we do get the approval to go forward, we will then reach out to those in the federal government to ask for their input and their advice in putting this plan together and treat them and consult with them as partners. And of course, we're going to include the state of New York. So what I'd like to do now is ask County Legislator Margaret Kensico to share her thoughts. She has been an advocate for this reconsideration, this reassessment. I've been in office 2 years. She's been in office longer than that. I think it was the first thing she said to me when we spoke, and she continues to be a strong advocate for her community. And then Margaret, after Margaret, I'll introduce again the other municipal officials. Legislator Kensico.
I have the privilege of representing both the towns of North Castle and Mount Pleasant that directly connect this road. And my experience as the previous chair of public safety for 2 years prior to this term, and my current term as vice chair of public safety, I feel that this is a necessity for emergency services purposes. Right behind you in that direction is the Valhalla Volunteer Ambulance Corps, not even a quarter of a mile away. They are responsible for patrolling and responding to calls in the areas of Mount Pleasant and North White Plains, including St. Christopher's School, which is directly over the bridge that way to the left, right up Route 22. So as we know, dealing with emergency services, time is of the essence. And in my mind, having the capacity to have fire departments and emergency services have access to this road would be invaluable and save a life. It's not only the access to this road, but right now when there is a call during rush hour, the ambulances and fire departments are dealing with the traffic that stems from the Bronx River Parkway and goes through the hamlet of Valhalla. Not only is that inconvenience, it's really a dangerous situation. Working with the commissioners of the North White Plains and Valhalla Fire Departments, as well as the commissioners with the Valhalla Volunteer Ambulance Corps, I've worked closely with them for the last few years to ensure that we try to do something to petition to get this road open. Working with the administration as well as the town officials, I feel that we do have a good chance to present our case, and I am hoping that we will be able to have access to this road and ultimately to help save lives and protect both these communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And thank you for your leadership on this issue throughout.
You.
I'm going to invite Town Supervisor for Gen Z. This is his turf to share his thoughts. And also, Carl, if you would introduce any of the people that are with us here that are from your town.
Thank you. With me here, we have the Commissioner of the Valhalla Fire Department, Tony Giacinto. Also representing the Valhalla Volunteer Ambulance Corps, we have Rebecca and Brianna. We do understand totally the reasoning for public safety. Nobody wants to see anything happen to this dam, obviously. But the public safety is also involved with the amount of traffic that's been generated throughout mostly the hamlet of Valhalla, especially in rush hour times. I do believe, and I agree with the county exec, that if we can come up with a strategic plan to limiting the types of vehicles and the hours of operation, that would be a major benefit to adding a little bit of traffic over this dam. Margaret has been a great advocate for us. We have had many conversations with DOTs and also EEP in regards to addressing the problems with traffic. They've been trying to make some changes throughout the town, which will not eliminate this particular problem. Opening up the dam on a restricted basis would be the best thing for the town of Mount Pleasant, for our volunteers, for our public safety personnel. So I totally support the county exec's efforts to move this forward, and we appreciate any support we get from the federal government on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Next, I'm going to ask Councilwoman Barbara Giacinto from the town of North Castle. She has been an active member of the town board, and in particular, she has prioritized issues that affect the hamlet of North White Plains, which is a part of the town of North Castle. Every first Saturday of the month, Barbara chairs a meeting in which she brings together local leaders from that section of the town. And the town of North Castle, as in the town of Mount Pleasant, are very large towns. Anybody that goes from the northern part of Westchester to the southern part of Westchester goes through one of those two communities. And as Carl's town goes from here all the way to the Hudson River and includes Sleepy Hollow and Pleasantville and the hamlets of Hawthorne and Thornwood and Pocanico Hills and a part of the village of Briarcliff Manor, Barbara's town goes to Armonk and Banksville and extends quite a bit of difference. The portion of the town of North Castle, that's North White Plains, is directly on the other side of this bridge, is distanced from the rest of the town. So it has been traditional that many of the services in the school district that serves that portion of North Castle are served by that's what serves Mount Pleasant as well. So Barbara, if you'd be kind to share your thoughts and also introduce any of your colleagues from your town.
Thank you. With me today is Matt Manfredi, And Matt is a North White Plains Fire Commissioner, former fire chief, and incidentally a former student when I was an English teacher at Westlake High School. I would like to thank County Executive George Latimer and County Legislator Margaret Kunzio for their initiative. As mentioned, we are very concerned with the fact that this road closure does sometimes impede our first responders. In addition, the residents of North White Plains and certainly Valhalla, as well as the business owners, have really suffered, particularly during morning and evening rush hour. I know that certainly safety first is without a doubt the prime consideration for all of us with the dam closure and the request to open it for limited use. Thank you.
I also like to recognize that we've been joined by Ellen Hendricks, who's the Assistant Director of Intergovernmental Services for Westchester County. She's a former councilwoman in the town of Greenburgh, which is the next town south, and she has direct contact with both of these communities on an ongoing basis. I want to highlight that this request is an example of the county trying its very best to be a partner to local governments. So many times in the governmental world, you have the federal government, state, the county, town, village, city, and people are, they're all separate entities and they war with each other. We're trying very hard to work with local governments to be partners with them, and when they evidence an issue that's important to them, that we respond to that. On the North Castle side of this, the county owns the Miller House, the former Washington headquarters. A priority of the town of North Castle was a renovation of that facility. Margaret Kunzio was an advocate for that. We were able to accomplish that. The 684 toll issue, which we all lobbied against because we thought it was negative, had a negative impact to the towns that are along the I-684 corridor. Those are examples of the county trying to be a good partner. People say you want to be a good partner, but these are those moments when you want to be a good partner. And that's exactly what I offer to our friends at the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. We're not looking for an argument. We are looking for reassessment. We think after 18 years, it is perfectly reasonable to ask for reassessment, and we're prepared to do the work to make the proposal back to the department for their consideration. And if they have done a past assessment that may have been done a certain number of years ago, we invite them to reconsider it. The problems that Carl and Margaret and Barbara have talked about have only gotten worse over the years as these communities have some growth in population and they have some growth in traffic, and the needs and the services of the emergency services have grown over the years as well. So we're hopeful that with this letter we will get a positive response. A positive response would simply be we will entertain any proposal that you'd like to give to us, and we certainly all are concerned, as Carl said, we're all concerned about the public safety and the security of the dam. That is essential, but we believe we can accomplish both goals, which is to ensure the security of the dam and as well open up a traffic process that is essential for emergency services, and we think as well for the general population within very set parameters. So with that, I'm going to stop the presentation, take any questions you have, and then if you'd like to interview any of these individuals when we're finished, our general questions, you're welcome to do it. Any questions? Tony.
I give you kudos for being so polite, because as someone who has followed the story closely since 2001 and watched the documentary Bombing Nazi Dams, it's not clear to me what the public safety concern is for keeping this road closed. As the Brits learned during World War II, it's virtually impossible to blow up a dam. And the idea that someone could dump enough stuff into 1 billion gallons of water to threaten the water supply is also really pretty far-fetched. So I get the sense that you're kind of pussyfooting around this a little bit.
Well, I'd like to say that I'm being diplomatic. I think we all agree with your general point of view, which is that the protection of the watershed does not require this road to be closed. It does require certain protections to be in place. We wouldn't dream of just opening it up. We wouldn't dream of having it operate with major vehicles that weren't government emergency vehicles traveling it, because certainly there could be some situations. But I'm no structural engineer, but what you pointed out I think is accurate. Whatever happens at the top of this structure, it would take some massive amount of work. to destabilize it enough to create the catastrophe that people fear most. And I think we've got capable police professionals, and they may tell us, here's the plan, and it's going to cost a hell of a lot of money. Here's the plan, and it's going to take a lot of manpower. But whatever it is, we owe it to the people of Mount Pleasant and North Castle to try to see if we can put a plan together and make it work. So if I'm more diplomatic than I should be, I appreciate the the agitation.
No, I was just wondering if there's some concern there that there's like the potential of bruising egos at DEP if you don't frame this in a certain way.
Well, I think, as I understand it, and I'll defer to whatever comes after this, they have a certain amount of authority in a situation like this, which we can't countermand by our own decision. I live in a world every day where I have a certain amount of authority, and I share some of that with the Board of Legislators. Each of the towns have a certain amount of authority that the county cannot override. We certainly live under an umbrella of the state government, which has superior authority and can, in any given bill or budget, change the county's reality upside down. So leadership, when you don't have absolute authority, is the real test of leadership. If you have all the power you could ever do, then you just point and it's done. And so we're trying to figure out, Margaret, myself, the Board of Legislators, how do we use information? How do we use a creative plan to accomplish something that we think Barbara and Carl and the people in their towns will benefit from? And that's our challenge. I don't know that we'll automatically be successful, but we're going to try. And we think we owe it to the people of these communities to try, and to try hard, not just to go through the motions of trying. Martin?
So I get this straight, that the county needs, I guess, permission from the DEP to put together a plan that they would entertain.
That's my understanding of it, that the DEP can grant, the DEC has the power to reopen the road. We are asking them not just to reopen the road per se. We understand that you're going to need to do something to give people confidence that there's security. So the ask in this letter is allow us to put a plan together and accept this. And candidly, what I don't want to do is spend $100,000, get everybody ginned up, we put a plan together and have it dismissed automatically. I don't know that it would be dismissed automatically, but I'm asking for the opportunity to put a plan together, which I think is an extremely reasonable request, a diplomatic request, as I might have said a second ago. And we think that that's a request that the DEP should consider seriously and should grant.
And if that is granted, they say, okay, put together a plan, at what point, what is the role or roles of either the state or the federal government?
Well, what I expect will happen if we get the ability to go forward, the first thing we're going to do is have a detailed study of the road and determine how much capital improvement is needed to put it back into business. We had a cursory look at it by our DPW Commissioner Hugh Grecian and his team, and I think we're looking at a $1.2, $1.3 million repair needed on the road. They'll have to come back and do a more detailed study to determine exactly what has to be done, and just as we've done with every project that we've looked at, from Memorial Field to the Miller House, lay out a game plan of how long that would take in order to make the road secure. And then the next level of difficulty will be, I guess, a group of folks in the law enforcement community. Our Commissioner, Sheriff Tom Gleason, is with us here today, and he and the chief of police of both these two communities would sit, meet, put a team of people together, and talk through all of the different elements. At that point in time, we would reach out to the Department of Homeland Security and the state appropriate department, arguably the state police, and we'd ask for their professional involvement in the process of determining what we need to secure it. We would look at, as I alluded to earlier, other roads, other bridges in the country that are strategic facilities and what they do to ensure that there's security, and see what could we pattern off of that. At some point in time when the plan is put together, it could be 60 days, 90 days. If we get the authority to go forward, I'm not hung up on the amount of time because we've waited 18 years to get to this point. But it will involve manpower and involve money. And we'll talk with the Board of Legislators to determine, how we allocate that money and over what kind of a time frame. There'll probably be some involvement of the two towns. And I think if there's a reasonable expectation that they can budget, we're not going to drop a mandate on them. We don't like mandates dropped on us. We're not going to drop one on them. But we'll have a dialogue. What's reasonable? What can each of the towns do to help us implement whatever the plan is? And out of that dialogue would be the plan that we would present. I assume a team of us would go to the city and meet with the respective DEP folks, and we would, as I once did when I first went into business, as a salesman, sell the plan, try to make people understand that we're sincere, we have a legitimate plan that can work, and try to get them to get to yes, as I was told once in my sales career, get the client to yes.
So it's the DEP who has the authority.
That's my understanding. But obviously, we'll find out a little bit more when we get our response, hopefully a positive one, and we'll see if the DEP is one level of approval and there may be other levels of approval that I'm not familiar with. We're certainly going to involve the state and the federal government as well. They are partners in this too, and they're certainly going to have an opinion. And as I've said earlier, they both are superior governments to the towns and the counties. We can all agree on whatever we want, and if they don't agree, we're not going to be able to accomplish it. But we're going to move step by step, we think, in an intelligent way.
In terms of the potential flexibility of how it might be reopened in terms of hours, there was in the media advisory ahead of us, it said like some possibilities are, geared towards rush hour times for just cars and as well as emergency responders. Is that a possibility that they'd like to see, hey, could it be open perhaps all hours, but maybe not nighttime hours, but could there even be limits during the daytime hours?
Well, the answer is, in whatever plan we put together, we are going to try to identify what limited hours represent. I think, we've already heard from our elected colleagues the urgency to have emergency vehicles have operation and access to this road all the time. If we have, as we have now, bollards up, I assume they would be up at night, but there would then be authority for an emergency vehicle to traverse the road, assuming the road is navigable, which it may not be at the moment, and it depends on the kind of equipment, the tonnage, all of the things that the fire department will tell us about for their vehicles. The emergency service vehicles will be a little more workable. Tom Gleason has a bomb squad truck and certain things that, God help us, is never going to be used, but that would also be the kind of thing that might need to go from one side of the bridge to the other, the dam to the other. But in terms of the sort of the civilian use of the open hours, we're going to lean on the two local governments to advise us. What do they think is the most practical time frame? Most of us look at the peak time frames to relieve pressure on Valhalla, the hamlet of Valhalla, and the hamlet of North White Plains. Now, I previously represented North White Plains in the state Senate, and I know of the problems on 22 traffic. I don't know if this opening will relieve any of that. We'll have to have that discussion. But the bottom line is that each side will have to look at what the traffic impacts are. And as we discuss it, the logical things that I put in the letter was an assumption that it would be open during morning rush hour, midday, maybe after school rush hour, because the school district spans the dam road, and then perhaps the evening rush hour. Now, the evening rush hour at times of the year is in darkness, so we'll have to discuss that. Because in general, we don't want it open at night when it's dark, because you can't see necessarily the people in the vehicles as well. But we'll have to discuss what a nighttime rush hour looks like in the wintertime season. And since we're all here on the media, turn your clocks ahead on Saturday night into Sunday. We're moving to daylight savings time.
The
Yes, sir.
supervisor, can you take us back to 2001 and what the fears were and what the thinking was when this road first was ordered closed?
Well, obviously there was fear created by that. Everybody was worried that our water supply could be eliminated. So there was a lot of fear with that. And it was coming from Homeland Security. And I tried to have a conversation with them. It was like I was from Mars. They wouldn't even give me any information. So definitely instilled fear on our community. I know that.
The fear was that this was some kind of target, right?
Sure, definitely.
And Mr. Latimer, what do you remember about those days right after the attack and what the fears were about this road?
Well, I think you have it actually right, Tony. There were fears. There was a sense that anything and everything could be under attack, that what we saw on 9/11, and you had a couple of other incidents. You had a fellow with something in his belt and somebody else with something in their shoes, and some of that has gone into the TSA way that they interdict us at an airport, that in any possible way we could be compromised as a society. The fact that our law enforcement organizations have done a great job of intercepting those things before they've happened doesn't give me a false sense of security. On the other hand, what it does tell me is that our law enforcement organizations, if given the opportunity to come up with a way to interdict it, have come up with a way to keep us safe on airplanes. And yes, we have to take off the shoes and the belts and all that stuff. But we feel that we've made steps to make it safe. By extension, the way we were in 2001 and early 2002 is not necessarily the way we might look at it today, 18 years later. We should be able to look at this. There's greater technology that's available to us today. And there may be certain steps. Now, it might be inconvenient than the normal route of driving a car. You drive a car and maybe you stop once in a while, there's traffic lights and so forth. This would be a harder passage to go through. But if you know that you save valuable time, or from an emergency standpoint, you save a life, we're willing to go through the extra scrutiny and then be able to negotiate the road. And that's the sense that I have as I look at this. I want to share one other thought, and then I'm going to stop and we'll let you interview people one-on-one, because I think a lot of these folks have interesting insights and they know on the ground things that I don't know, and I think you want to hear their story. I have been on the local level of government, a city, not a town, but the same thing, small city. And I've obviously now in the county government, both a legislator and an executive, and I've been in the state level of government as a legislator. At some point in time, higher levels of government have to respect local government. I'm not sure that respect is there. And why do I say that? The larger issue of running a federal government, a state government, even a county government is wide and vast. But the people that you meet along the way who have skill and ability are not always found in the highest level of government. Sometimes the smartest, most able people I've met are in a local government. And I think sometimes their expertise is discounted because of the size of the jurisdiction. It's one person as a town planner in a town government. They're not the planner, for the state or for the federal government. But the skills that one person has are significant. And I've watched over the years at the different levels of government I've been at as I interact with the one I have not served in, which is the federal government, an unwillingness to really dialogue with people in lower levels of government because your opinions are discounted the minute you express them because you're judged by the size of your jurisdiction. If you're in a village of 6,000 people, you can't possibly be as smart as me because I run a government of 1 million people. I don't believe that. None of us believe that. I think the expertise in the county government, the town government, the village government, the city government, if put to a task, can be just as effective as the people who run a much larger government. And I credit those who run the city of New York. I credit those who run the state of New York and run the national government because their tasks are bigger than the tasks that we have. But that doesn't mean that this local government combination can't come back with a plan that could work. And that's what I think we need to have discussed. And if we're correct and we get to the point where we can open this up and solve a problem, then we'll just move on to the next problem. There won't be any parades. We'll just try to address the next problem. So with that, I thank you all for your time. And friends, please, this is your moment to be famous.
Just want to make
I'm sorry. Carl's going to make one more point. Forgive me.
Just one more point. You talked about being diplomatic before. It is very important in my position as town supervisor to be diplomatic, and George is very good at being diplomatic, and I appreciate that. But I think it's time that we have to be listened to. The federal government has to listen to its constituents in the municipalities that are affected like we are. So I appreciate your efforts with Margaret and all our neighboring communities that we have to push this through and at least sit down and have a conversation about it. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you all very much. Please, again,
Thank
feel
you.
free to become famous.